go. Second question. What can the U.S. do to stop trafficking the borders, and why isn't it working?
You mean our borders or over
Or,
there
or I mean, our
or
borders
anywhere?
here and anywhere.
Uh-huh. From what I gather, probably our most powerful ally would be the United Nations itself. And I know that they have, as you've probably read in the book, proclamations out against child trafficking of any kind, and particularly, of course, the girl children, because of the fact that they can be used, so to speak, for prostitution and that sort of thing. But that's probably our greatest ally. They have got proclamations regarding it and this kind of thing. What I don't know at this moment in history, because I'm a little out of date in terms of what is currently happening, is exactly what they are doing and how they're handling that. Are you aware, Herb?
No, because my mind is, this is so widespread, it is horrendous.
It'd be very difficult to get a hold of it,
Yeah.
but just I know what you're saying. You got to start somewhere.
Well, just one statistic related to this, that's not prostitution unless you want to call it institutionalized, is every 6 seconds around the world, a girl who's under 18 is committed to marriage without her permission. And all these are illegal marriages around the world now. You cannot get married under 18. If you do, it's not a legal contract. But every 6 seconds. So we're talking an incredible number of countries involved in this this type of thing. I remember reading this article, which I couldn't even finish, where hundreds of children per month are farmed into Bombay, and they are put up in apartments, and they don't come out until they die. In other words, they are there. This is the death penalty. The boys are castrated. There's far more of the male prostitution than what you would imagine. The Islamic countries, which give the facade of ain't we pure, are not pure. And the Saud family, part of the reason why Osama bin Laden was furious at the Saud family, which controls Saudi Arabia, is, Jeanne and I could not hold hands in Saudi Arabia. You can't possibly drink alcohol there if you're from Saudi Arabia.
And
so
it's
all
preferable
this.
that women walk behind their men.
Yeah, and Jeanne could not drive a car there, but the Saud family has been well known for flying in male and female prostitutions with all the alcohol flowing. So this is the great hypocrisy. This is the country which we join with politically. This is our great American friend. They're the ones that brought us 9/11. The 9/11 people were Saudi Arabians. Now I say that because Saudi Arabia is connected with India, and a lot of Indian people go there and work doing cleaning jobs, the lower ranked jobs which are paid little, and then the money is sent back home, and then that's the connections with Indian girls going to Saudi Arabia.
And how are like prostitutes? How are they trafficked over to the United States? How does no one from the borders catch them being prostituted over into the United States?
I'm not quite sure. I think they probably get illegal. It's very easy there to do. There's so much corruption with police and people with money, in some of those, in the SARC countries particularly, where money really talks, and especially in very poor countries. And so I think a lot of times it's payoffs and that sort of thing, and they get the right kind of papers. They get a document that, is maybe what would you say, a passport of some sort that's been forged in some way, and it looks like the rest of them because they have an in with certain authorities and that sort of thing. So it's many times it's just corruption, and corruption doesn't just exist, say, with mafia types like you might have here, or with certain little gangster groups and things like that in various cities, but it's prolific. It's prolific everywhere, and particularly I think with people with money, and who don't really have a good sense of morals. And really a lot of Indian people do. They really, really do. But there are some for whom it doesn't matter, just like there are in this culture, that they live in the scum of the underground all the time, and that's where they operate. So I think that's kind of
Well,
or whatever you would say.
for 3,000 years, prostitution of girls was sacralized. It was religionized, and these girls were given by their parents because they didn't want them to the temple, and then men would go to the temple, and this was considered a religious act. The problem in the United States is, and around the world is, we got this 180 degrees wrong, and so we arrest these girls, these women, as bad people, immoral. They're not bad, immoral. They have been victimized. We should be hitting those who are behind the scenes, who operate this thing. These are, to arrest them is to double victimize them. I mean, already they have been victim, and then we victimize them a second time. So we have it 180 degrees wrong. Yeah.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. How do you think that this affects the girls and what they're going through after they get through the severe beatings and the rapings and after they get into the full life of prostitution? How do you think post-traumatic stress disorder affects them?
Can you speak to that first, Herb? I mean, you'll probably
I
say
haven't
it,
read
but with your
reports on
psychology
this,
background.
and I haven't.
Sure, it discusses it.
I worked with
It's been a while since I've read it.
emotionally disturbed delinquent youth for 4 years who had been some in prostitution. Two things. The youth that I work with on the surface, had a remarkable ability to blank out things. I mean, off the charts. So they would have had horrific experiences, and they somehow can abstract themselves. And when this becomes extreme, it's multiple personality disorder, where you'll have abused children split off and saying, my daddy did this to Jane, I'm not Jane, I'm someone else. And it's an incredible defense mechanism, and a lot of the youth had this that I dealt with. They had that ability, which was a grace. I mean, thank goodness they had that.
There's also the survival factor too. If it's the best level of survival that they can continue to live at, you know, they do it because that's the only way they can make it go. I mean, I've seen one film that Sharda had where the woman's little child, who was maybe a few years old, I don't know if it was even 5 yet, had a little chain around, I don't know if it was its arm or its leg, outside of the room where she was with a man, and she had the little child like chained to a post or something out there so it wouldn't run away or get lost or get kidnapped or something while she was in doing her quote-unquote business. So, you know, it's really tragic. It's
For those who
unbelievable.
cannot abstract themselves, I think it's a living hell in the worst way. And I would assume that in their minds that they are suicidal continually. Who would even want to live? I don't think I'd want to live. I think I would take my life if I were in that situation and could not, and saw no hope of getting out. It is worse and worse. I can't.
I think the other piece of it, in a way too, and this is just supposition, and you can react to this, Herb, is it could be also to a degree just the in Hinduism itself, you have your levels of reincarnation. You know, if you were a great sinner and did something terrible in a former life, you're obviously going to be living, you know, one of the poorest lives. And so it could be that some people just accept it and say, well, that's where I belong, you know, in my, what, karma would it be called,
Very
or
good.
something like that.
Very good.
And maybe the next time if I do things, you know, but I do this now to survive, then I'm stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and in that society you're stuck with it, whether or not it's reincarnation, in my opinion, many times. But, you know, they're just thinking, well, maybe the next time it'll be better, you know, the next time when I live another life. But that just sounds very ruthless to me, you know.
That's really insightful. To generalize, obviously not all people, Mindy, would agree with this, but it is fate and destiny. Everything you get, you deserve. So you got 8 Mercedes, you deserve those. If you're cleaning out the toilets, you deserve that. When I was in the hospital, they would not give me pain meds for days on end.
Yeah.
I deserve that. So whatever you get, you deserve. How horrific. Now, if you accept it, then the payoff is you're going to get a better reincarnation. So you do have this stoic acceptance. In India, it's not proper to thank people because that's their duty. Everything is duty. Everything is acceptance.
But they do have that polite, where they do the little bow, which to me, I accept that as a thanks. But I didn't think about that they don't verbally. I don't think they very often verbally do it.
They told us basically we don't thank each other. Now again, I'm generalizing. As they become more westernized, they become more personal in that way. Yeah. Yeah, that was really insightful. The law of karma: you get what you deserve. Sharda Sridevi Ma believes that she is a reincarnation of a very famous guru called Ramakrishna, who was married to a young woman, I mean a girl, and that who died early in life, and that she is that reincarnation. So that's who she believes she is.
Let me tell you a little about Sharda's background too. The reason she got involved in it, she was born into not the highest caste, but one that would be, say, into business and that sort of thing, which is still quite high and respected in India. And her father actually was a famous lawyer for the area in Cochin, Kerala, where we were in the state of Kerala. And there were 4 daughters in her family, and she was the oldest of the 4. And according to Indian tradition, the oldest daughter has to be married first because of all the money that goes out for dowry. They have to take them in order, and then the marriages are arranged. So her parents came to her one day and said that they had seen this young man who was a soldier, and had talked with his parents, and they thought he would make a good husband for her. And she said, well, she had gotten a glimpse of him once and kind of liked what he looked like. And she said that would be okay with her, if you can imagine, saying, sure, I'll marry him, on the basis of that, which is sort of funny from our opinion. But that's, how it's done there. And people accept it, and generally it works out okay. At least I gather it does. But in this instance, the wedding day came. They had done all of the arrangements, and their weddings today are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is terribly high, so much so that abortion of girl babies is becoming very common, which is really, they're trying to back off on that now. But the wedding day came, and all the preparations were there, and guests had come, from miles around. And they usually stay for 3 days for a wedding, and they're fed, and there's feasting and dancing and bands and music, and it's very expensive. And the groom was in the army, and he was coming in the car with his friends, and they were in an accident on the way, and the young man was killed on the way to the wedding, if you can imagine. And apparently what happened is they sent, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 of the young fellows who had escaped the accident alive, they sent them one down, then eventually they waited, everybody waited so long, and they wondered what in the world happened. And these young guys did show up, and they said that they had terrible news to bring. They told the parents first, and then the parents were just totally grief, went and told Sharda, and she was so devastated because in their culture, because of this law of karma, it was as though she was being punished for some horrible sin from a former life. And she was so shamed and so embarrassed and the whole bit. She went into just a fetal position for I don't know how many weeks, was in a psychotic state. And eventually she refused to get married and refused to get married. And finally, her father came to her and he said, we have to do something because we can't marry your 3 younger sisters until you are. And so she decided to give him permission to go ahead and marry the other 3 girls off without, and just leave her alone and let her go on and get higher education. So she went and got 4 master's degrees and a doctorate in a row, including not only India but also in San Francisco. And there she met some women activists, and she began to see, her own situation from a different set of eyes, women's live and how women many times were victimized, and how she felt she had been by her culture, and also by the people around her who were brought up in that culture all that time, and also by her fate, in a sense, because of what happened to her. And so she, eventually became a very strong, outspoken person for women's rights and that sort of thing. And I know in Kerala she became so strong that police used to go after her because some of them were collaborating with the traffickers. And they would come after her, and on the highway, they would bump the bumper